Thank you so much for coming. The Studio Museum opened to the public in September 1968, just over 47 years ago. We are an institution deeply rooted in this community and committed to redefining what art can mean to a highly diverse body of viewers and audience. So it seems particularly apt tonight that we have the chance to host this amazing program that explores the power and possibility of art and artists to contribute to communities around the globe, from Harlem to New Orleans to Johannesburg. I've long been a supporter of and a beneficiary of the Aspen Institute's commitment to creating space for meaningful and important and impactful discussions about contemporary culture. So it is with great pride and a great sense of welcome that I introduce Damien Wurtzel, who directs these fantastic art programs for the Institute, who will tell you more about this fantastic panel this evening and this incredible group of artists who are here tonight to talk about their work. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Thelma, and it is an honor to be here in your museum to have this discussion, and also over the years the interactions we've had, but for the first time actually to do an event with you, as it were. I'm thrilled. Okay, so welcome. We're here tonight for what we're calling Theater in Extremis, which speaks to, just at its base, the idea of theater in a situation that's just not so pat, shall we say. A theater where you go and you sit and the curtain is down and it's up and that's it and we go there. We're talking about something else here tonight. And I also think that we're talking about people here tonight, about the way that not only the actors interact with the material, but also how the audience, their expectations of what they're coming to see change in different circumstances. And also the thought that goes into how theater over the millennia can actually have an influence on a given situation. So it's my pleasure to first welcome Wendell Pierce, actor, stage, and author of his memoir, The Wind in the Reeds, which is available for those of you who haven't read it yet. I can tell you that you're certainly going to want to after this. So, Wendell, just to get started, just right into it, we're talking about Theater in Extremis, and the premise that, is the central kind of defining event in this book regarding, the one thing here is Godot in New Orleans post-Katrina. Tell me about how this happened to you.
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming out tonight, especially on a night like this with a hurricane threatening. I'm from New Orleans, and 10 years ago, one of the greatest disasters befell my city, my community, my family, my friends. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I knew, though, that years from now, people would ask, some little kid would come up to me and say, Mr. Pierce, in New Orleans' darkest hour, what did you do? And I wanted to have an answer for that. And the first thing I am, besides the New Orleanian, besides Wendell Pierce, besides Althea and Amos's son, I am an actor. And I knew that that would be the thing that I would respond with. I was first asked to do the play Waiting for Godot here in Harlem. We did it at the Classical Theater of Harlem, 15,000 gallons of water on the stage, a rooftop where Estragon struggles with his shoe, and I enter sludging through, wading through this water chest high without changing a word. Mr. Beckett's classic play about desolation, about this void, these two men searching for who they are, what they are, who can they be, about man's isolation in the world, looking for something outside of themselves, standing on this rooftop with this water and waiting for Godot. That image resonated immediately with what was happening in New Orleans. And then we decided to do the play in New Orleans, at our ground zero, the lower Ninth Ward, on that hallowed ground where for miles around, 360 degrees, you saw nothing but destruction, where so many people died. It was on hallowed ground. And we did it there this one fall evening, and it was one of the most cathartic moments in my life. And for the people there was the essence of what catharsis is. When we realized that there was a common humanity that went across whatever disparate variables that made us who we were, that connected us. And then I realized that the play was classic in the truest sense. Classic in the fact that it speaks to that humanity across time, even, and place. Mr. Beckett, under Nazi occupation, wrote it about that isolation. It spoke again to the people who were going through the Balkan War when Susan Sontag did a production of it in the 80s, and then we were doing this production in New Orleans. And it was there that I realized lawyers with longshoremen, housewives with secretaries, with the everyday man with the astute, erudite, artistic fan, really were humbled by this presence of a play that spoke volumes to people who had just gone through the worst disaster in their life. And it was an awakening for me. It was awakening to the power of art, that art is not just incidental, it is not just a piece of entertainment. It is something that is essential to the human spirit and existence. It is tangible, it is real. It was also an awakening to me that this was something that we had lived in New Orleans all of my life and was a part of what New Orleans is. We live our culture. As Albert Murray used to say, a mentor of mine, it's the intersection of life and how people deal with it. That literal intersection is our culture and our art, and it's tangible. And in New Orleans, art is seen as insurrection, as reformation, and an awakening, and it was the thing that inspired me to do the play, and the thing that inspired me to try to capture this snapshot in my life, that changed my life, inspired me to write the book. And I just want to share with you this from The Wind and the Reeds. This is the story of my homecoming. This is the story of my part in the pilgrimage of my family and my people out of exile. It is a story of faith, hope, and love. And it is a story that begins with a slave child waving goodbye to his family on the banks of the river, as the boat carried him south into an abyss of suffering. That I am here to tell the tale at all means it is not a tragedy. It means that as long as we draw breath, tragedy, even a tragedy as overwhelming as a hurricane that nearly destroyed a city, does not have to have the last word. Like the poet W.H. Auden says, we stagger onward, rejoicing. Those car lights I saw that night on Claiborne Avenue Bridge belonged to New Orleanians who were also a part of that pilgrimage. I did not know it then, and they didn't either, but I am certain of it now. Those fellow pilgrims were headed into the Lower Ninth Ward to affirm by their presence that the power of art, the bonds of the beloved community, and the perseverance of the human spirit are all lights that the darkness cannot overcome. In American culture, we have turned away from an awareness of the prophetic power of art, of its role as a means of revealing the hidden order beneath everydayness, and its power to transform us and the world. Art tells us who we are, and it tells us who we must become. Art doesn't give us life's answers as much as it empowers us to live life's questions. Art, like religion, is how the eternal and the ideal enters time and becomes real. In turn, it is how we mortals experience, if only for a moment, immortality. Art is how we humans individually and collectively impress our seal on the wax. It's how we charge ordinary matter, wood, paint, stone, a word, a voice, a note, a gesture, with life and spirit and harmony. Art is the most serious thing we can do, because when making it, we humans, forged in the image of God, are most like our Creator. We tend to forget that. This production of Godot in that weary time and in that storm-battered place helped me remember. And I was far from the only one. Early in the play's first act, Vladimir hears a voice and thinks it might signal Godot's approach. Ah, snorts Antigone dismissively. The wind in the reeds. We would be wrong to dismiss that sound. Man is only a reed, said the French philosopher Blaise Pascal. But he is a thinking reed. When the winds of adversity blow hard against him, the sound they make as they pass over his contours may be mere noise, or they may be something like the music of teenage Sidney Bechet, grandson of a slave, made when he blew across his clarinet's reed and standing on the back of a New Orleans furniture truck next to a horn-playing juvenile delinquent named Louis Armstrong, helped create jazz. I learned from the late Albert Murray, the great Harlem connoisseur of black music, that art is the way individuals and cultures react aesthetically to their experiences in life. Jazz and the blues, the most American of all musical forms, is the sound made by history's savage gales blowing hard on African people in the diaspora. The storm-tossed reeds may be humble, but the reeds are thinking, the reeds are feeling, and the reeds are resilient. The reeds sing a song of triumph. The harder the wind blows, the stronger our spirit, the purer our art, and the greater our victory. The wind in the reeds. So that was the thing that inspired me to do it, is the play.
And when did it actually happen? It's 2007 when it actually...
2007, the storm happened in 2005. This was in 2007. Creative Time.
Yep.
Who actually did the tribute here, the lights going up, arts presenting. And Paul Chan, visual artist, went to the lower ninth ward and he saw it and he said, this reminds me of every production of Waiting for Godot. The void, the road, the tree, and nothing else. And we decided to bring it down there. And we went to different arts groups and did workshops with them also. We didn't want to do it in a vacuum. Invited people, it was open to the public. We brought a second line band in and brought them to their seats and did the play. I made an entrance from 2 blocks away. And I just remember that when I was there, I was so definitely aware of that we were on the killing fields. That there were people that had died here through no fault of their own, and we were on hallowed ground. It made me think of the ritual of the procession of how we honor our dead, and in New Orleans. And I said I wanted to make sure that we do it for them. And it was the moment came in the play where I just was transfixed, and actually it was like an out-of-body experience, because it was like you here in this room. It was a shared experience where everyone in the play, watching the play, had gone through this loss, no matter where they had come from in the city. And there's that prophetic line in the play where I looked into their eyes and said, let us do something while we have the chance. At this place, in this moment in time, all mankind is us, whether we like it or not. Let us do something while we have the chance. And that just rung out to me. I saw people moved by it, and it moved me. And it made me remember the power of art. That what thoughts are to the individual, where you lie awake at night and reflect on who you are, what's your existence about, how have you failed, how have you triumphed, what sort of man or woman that you want to be, and what is of value to you moving forward. As you toss and turn and reflect on all those things as an individual, in the forum of art is where we do it as a society, as a whole, where collectively, going all the way back to the Greeks, where we reflect on who we are, where have we been, what's of importance to us. It is in that forum where we declare what our values are and then act on them.
It's a heavy mission. you were on. And I mean that, in the book you describe that entrance, first of all, from 2 blocks away. And it made me think about, I was in a neighborhood outside of Detroit 2 years ago. There's a club there called the Raven, which is in the middle of Lost Blocks, essentially. Yes. And you sounded like you were in Lost Blocks, and you could see the crowd, and you came towards them, and you said under your breath, but mic'd, we're going to change something.
We're going to change something. Let's do this. It's coming.
But they could hear you.
But they could hear.
So it made me think of stage directions, because there's craft in all of this too. And think of like Death of the Salesman, where it's indicated that he may say something like, oh boy, as he comes in and puts down his case on the stage entrance. And I thought, so it was your own stage direction, almost, to yourself. But how did you handle that as an actor, putting that on yourself? We're going to change something, and we're going to go out there and do it through this.
I felt a great responsibility, not just to the play, but to the moment. As I said before, one of our hosts was Robert Greene, who literally lost his mother and his grandchild and watched them as they slipped away, where he put his grandchild here, reaches back for his mother to hold her, looks back, and the child is gone. The other grandchild jumps into the water. He saves her, but can't save the first, initial one. Turns to his mother and goes, and she says, "That's okay. Let go, baby. Let go. Don't fight." And gave in to the gale, to the waters. How I entered that hallowed ground was moved by that. It was a legacy of responsibility that if you were going to try to speak about this, do it with great care and with great reverence and with all of the ability that you have. It was really a prayer from me saying, I need to do this. We have to do this. I'm coming for you, I would say. And it was planting in the audience the ideas of what we were about to do. But I realized that, that was something that is a part of New Orleans culture. Most people, we understand, you see the Second Line Parade, it's from social aid and pleasure clubs. We understand the pleasure part. You see the music, you see the dancing, but the social aid part we forget about. It's when people couldn't get burial plots, when people weren't allowed with health care. They were redlined by insurance companies. And during Jim Crow, folks in my community pooled their money in the African tradition of the tontu. And if your mama took sick, we're going to give her something. If your daddy dies, we're going to send him off nice. It was our own benevolence. So we know the pleasure part. We forget that it was social aid and pleasure clubs. So whenever you see a Second Line Parade in New Orleans, realize that it's an act of self-reliance. It's an act of uplift, it's a revelation of saying that exercising your right of self-determination in the face of all odds, of those gale force winds that may blow those reeds, but they bend, but they don't break, and resilience. And so our culture was always made out of that, going all the way back to the beginning of jazz. Africans in chains in Congo Square, freed for that one afternoon on Sunday to play the bambula, to play and dance the bambula, that African six, and then they hear the brass music of their captors, and merge the two, jazz. And say, we're going to comment on our situation. They found their freedom of expression before their own physical freedom. And it was there that they created art, which was about insurrection, which was about freedom, which was about the
hope,
search
too.
and the hope and the optimism
yeah.
of freedom. It's the thing that sustained them. And it's the most American of aesthetics, where you have technical proficiency and the confinement of law or whatever is confined, but within that expressive thought. And the merger of the two is the thing that empowers us so much to do more. And
that really was the point.
The humanity within us.
But in a sense, the mission was to spur all assembled and all who would learn of it to action.
to action.
To take care of yourself. Because the message, to my mind, the absurdist message of Godot is you'll wait forever.
Yes.
Unless you
Right.
wake up.
I was inspired to become an actor by a company when I was growing up in New Orleans called the Free Southern Theater, and they were in the midst of the civil rights movement of the '60s, and they would go around to the marches and actually do plays under the threat of violence. Sometimes they wouldn't come out for their curtain call; they would leave, so they could avoid the violence. In their first year, they did Waiting for Godot.
They did.
And they did Waiting for Godot in the Mississippi Delta.
Yeah.
And the director was standing off to the side, and this elderly black sharecropper was standing there, and he said, "Excuse me, son." He said, "Yeah." He said, "You were part of this play?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm the director." He goes, "Yeah." He said, "I just want to tell you, he ain't coming." He said, "What?" He said, "I know all about this. That Godot guy, he ain't gonna come."
Yeah.
And so it was. The gauntlet was thrown down. It showed you how classic that play is and how it speaks to everyone's humanity. No matter how low or erudite you may think you are, it actually speaks to the authentic truth of the human being, and that this sharecropper in Mississippi in the 1960s knew Waiting for Godot was a futile thing to do because he wasn't going to come, because he understood that futility as he worked these fields and knew that he was going to put in a crop and never get what he rightfully was owed, and was going to always owe the landowner and be in this perpetual cycle of poverty. So it spoke to him.
It's a universal truth
Yes.
that echoes. And you mentioned as far back as the Greeks and further, which I think we should invite Gregory Mosher, great director. Phumzile Sitole, to expand this conversation. Welcome, Greg. Because Gregory's just returned from staging Antigone, Sophocles' great drama about justice in Africa, with Phumzile Sitole as his Antigone. And when we last spoke about this, there were lots of hopes and dreams. We talked about this in July at the Aspen Institute in Aspen. And you hoped for many things to come out of this. And you and I have talked about this for several years, this dream, to take it to Kibera in Nairobi, to take it to girls' schools, particularly, and to prisons, and to areas that you felt the play might matter in a specific way, not dissimilar to the American story that Wendell just told us about Beckett's Godot. How did it go? Give us a little snapshot of what it felt like to bring that to those circumstances.
I also thank you for coming out on a potentially stormy night. I love Studio Museum. I'm happy to be here. I met Wendell half an hour ago for the first time. Thrilled to be on a stage with him. Phumzile was my student. Now she's my colleague. Do you mind if I circle back?
Please.
You talked about immortality. And it is, in a way, what one is always searching for in the arts, when you work in the theater, an ephemeral experience. It goes away. What does immortality mean when you do the performance and then it's gone? Right? It's a wonderful paradox that all of us who work in the theater deal with and struggle with. And the answer to the immortality comes out of the utter specificity of the moment itself. The moment you seek immortality, it ain't gonna happen. But if you go to something as specific as that 2-block walk, I did not see this production. I've seen clips of it. Is it a full doc about the making of it? Because I saw the second line stuff and the enormous work with the community to prepare for this. And that's where immortality comes from. It's from putting that food on your plate and then going to see the play. It's the specificity of that move. And to make this kind of theater, you need a special audience. There was long before your production of Godot, there was a production in the San Quentin prison. Shortly after the play was first produced in America. And the critical establishment in America was utterly confused about this play. They did not know what to write. Norman Mailer dismissed it in the Village Voice as effeminate, and then came back a month later, bless his heart, and said, well, I guess I was wrong. This is great, great work. So Martin Esslin, a man who coined the term theater of the absurd, was in San Quentin. This is a very famous performance that Wendell, of course, knows about. And it was the San Francisco Actors Workshop. And Esslin said, well, they may be confused in New York, but the prisoners know what Waiting for Godot is about. Waiting. And it's the same thing, right? So for us, Antigone was a way of getting to a community that, well, here's the shorthand way of saying it, that doesn't know who Donald Trump is, or care who Donald Trump is, who doesn't watch television, who aren't on toys all the time. What we did was, in a sense, very selfish. There was no charitable aspect to going to the slums of Nairobi or the townships of South Africa. Don't mistake it. This group of two South African, there were 6 kids in the company, young people, mostly young people in the company, 2 South Africans, 2 African Americans, one of whom left the night before the storm hit in New Orleans, Ninth Ward kid, and got bussed out. He was a teenager at the time, got bussed out to West Texas and was raised there. Named Marcel Spears, his dad's minister. How crazy is that, right? And 2 young white actors. And we would walk into a classroom, half the size of this room sometimes, or a prison, or a community center, and we had no set, and we had no lights. We needed an altar. And sometimes we would find bricks or something. Sometimes there wasn't that, but there was always a wash pail. So we would turn over the wash pail, and we would set a candle in the wash pail. And the kids would gather around. We were always amongst them, as opposed to this setup where we were in front of them. And we would walk amongst them during the performance, the actors would. And Phumzile would come out wearing kids and leggings, and sweater. Very focused. Kneel in front of this candle. And pray. And whether it was 50 kids, sometimes as young as 6th graders, or one night we played to 1,000 girls in the dining hall in Kenya High School. 1,000 girls. No stage, nothing. The focus at that moment was, Wendell and I went to the same school. It's everything you pray for is that kind of focus. What will happen next? And then she becomes engaged, as you know, from having played Creon, in a holy act. So we just tested it, Damien. We went to 17 venues. We meant to close in Robben Island, where Mandela was incarcerated, as you all know, for 27 years, but the seas were too choppy, but we couldn't go. So what is the theater, really? That was part of your question. To ask what the theater is, to ask what a theatrical act is, pray, is simultaneously to ask with what community, or for what community, but with what community is better are you creating this? And we have so many forms in America. We have subscription audiences and Broadway tickets and all this stuff. And although they're all well-meaning, ultimately they stand in between the actor and the experience of the play.
I want to cut you there for a second and just say, would you do the scene that we discussed from Antigone at this moment? Gregory, maybe you could set it up.
I should set it up. Creon, Wendell, has the Civil War has ended the night before. There was a brother who was loyal to Creon. There was a brother who led a rebel army, a terrorist army, really, because he came to destroy Thebes. The 2 brothers have killed, her 2 brothers, his nephews, have killed each other in battle. And Creon has ruled that the loyal brother will get a state funeral, and the disloyal brother, the terrorist brother, will be left for the birds and dogs to eat. And anyone who touches that body will be stoned to death. And in the first scene, Antigone says to her sister, I gotta bury the body. And the sister says, you'll be stoned to death. And Antigone says, I gotta do what I gotta do. And she's captured, and she's led before Creon.
You, with your face on the ground, do you say you did it, or do you deny this act?
I say I did it, and I don't deny it.
Tell me then. No speeches now. Did you know I'd made a law against this very act?
How could I not? It was explicit.
And yet you dared to break it.
Yesterday you made this law, and you'll make another tomorrow. But the fixed, unwritten laws of heaven are outside time. We don't know where they came from, nor can we know. Should I risk punishment for breaking them because I feared a mortal's thought? You say I will die. I don't need you to tell me that's my fate. I've always known this, even as a child. So what if I die now? When you live with many evils as I do, death is not the worst thing. I have no sadness for this destiny. Sadness would be to leave my mother's son without a grave. If this seems foolish to you, find a fool to judge.
She thinks she's smart to muddy up the laws. She laughs and boasts she breaks them twice. I am not a man. No, she's the man. If her audacity goes unpunished. I don't care if she's my sister's child, my closest living kin. She will die the death I have decreed. I accuse the sister too. Though just as close to me, she helped commit this crime. She's inside, raving. Call her out! I hate when someone's caught attempting bad and then pretends it's beautiful.
You seem to want more than my death.
Oh no, girl. If I have that, I have it all.
Then stop talking if my words displease you. Yours displease me and others, though they will not say.
Don't you see that no one's with you?
They are with me, but their tongues are numb with fear.
Oh, you think so? Speak, if you agree with her. Well, aren't you ashamed?
There was no shame in honoring my own flesh and blood.
Another of your flesh died fighting for his homeland.
We are all of the same flesh. Yes.
Yet you honored the godless one.
It is not for you to say who's godless and who's not.
It's clear enough for everyone but you.
He was my brother.
And he attacked. The other fought with us.
The death world asks that we perform these rites.
But only for the good.
Who knows? The customs may be different there.
Not even death makes friends of enemies.
Great King, I do not hate as you do. I live to love.
Then love in hell. No woman rules my life.
So, lots of questions to ask just right after that, but I want to ask you, Phumi, right off the bat. So, as a South African woman going to do this play, you must have had some expectations of what it might the reaction might be, but also, you know, we talked about Godot being a call to action in New Orleans. Were you doing a version of his, I'm going to make some change, as you walked into those rooms and transfixed them and got their attention and
Not intentionally.
used your craft?
I mean, that definitely came. It wasn't the intention, I feel, to arrive and change. I mean, we were there to arrive and share. like Wendell was speaking about the shared experience, there was just something about going into a group. The groups that were most memorable were the ones where we felt there was immense community within them. For example, the group of 1,000 young girls, high school girls, that really, by the time Creon was doing this scene, I felt that they were all with me. I felt like I
Did they, for instance, did they answer when he said, "Speak if you're with her"?
we changed that line so that they respond.
I had a feeling that maybe didn't
No, 'cause
get
we
the
know
same reaction we got here, but
play would have ended. But it was definitely great to always get to that moment with a group, say, of young women like that, because they're so thoroughly with you by the time you get to that scene. That and it's funny because I felt as actors, every time we arrived in a different community, it was the same with the young juvie boys. We performed for about 200 and something young men in prison, and there's something about the group of actors that we become their community. So it's funny because there was the wardens as well, and we felt the separation between us and the wardens. It felt like we were on the side with the prisoners, because there's something about this play, the standing up for justice, standing up for women, that immediately created that bonding experience. So not that necessarily we went in with the intention to change and I don't know, to get them thinking in this way, but there was a let's all go on this journey using this example of a life dynamics, the relationship between a young woman and an elderly man, and reflect on it through the performance, and see and feel actually where the audience goes with us, and where all of our journeys, heart and spirit wise, carry through the performance. And that was the amazing, remarkable thing, to join in with the community that we arrived into each time. I think
that's a common thread throughout theater. I'm going to reference, oddly, an article that's going to be in the New York Times on Sundays, but I've already read it, as anybody who goes online, it's just this world we live in now, about Gregory, your play Love Letters, Gurney's play that you're directing right now, and it's on tour with the stars of Love Story, with Ryan O'Neill and Ali MacGraw, which brings an audience in with a preconceived, and you talked about Eric Kandel, and the quote was the beholder's stake, if I believe. Beholder's share of any performance. And what you're talking about in the community was their part in it. And I imagine, Wendell, for you too, in that it was all about the beholder's share in a funny way.
There was director Stuart Vaughan, who I remember we worked on a play, and he was just to the point where he's now ready to perform, and he said, "Now your other scene partner is going to join us." And I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "The audience. They're in the scene with you. And so that is the share that they're talking about, and that is the thing that makes it profoundly a communal experience. And it is the reason we go into darkened rooms to see theater and to say, I recognize my humanity in that story that is being told. And learning from that experience and making a decision about how it's going to impact me and what I'm going to do about it. I'm sure. And what happens is as we get older, we put on all of the different shells and encase ourselves and take away, and become more inhibited.
Yeah, the spontaneous creativity.
The spontaneity goes away. That's why I'm sure they had to take that line out when they were doing it in those girls' schools, because they're probably there with stones ready to stone Creon. They're ready to, they're ready to take on Antigone's fight. And save everyone. Antigone is Mene, everyone. And so that is that is the dance, that is the sharing back and forth, that is the thing that frightens folks when they see the power of art. And art is in all different disciplines. There's art in politics. There's, when that one politician has that cathartic moment with the populace, and everyone is afraid because he has captured, they call it the zeitgeist, but it is really that
Well, and
cathartic moment.
and it's
that,
also it's biology.
yeah.
I mean, it is in us to want to belong, and when that starts to rise. And
yeah.
Gregory, what did you feel as being sort of the? I mean, you're the instigator of what was going on there. And I want to say, I think that if what was going on in New Orleans was a call to take action, to reclaim the neighborhood, to take Pontchartrain Park back, if you will, to a place of community, it can be our community again. And you were calling for awareness and the ability within communities to stand up for themselves. It seems to me, which is a little dangerous in certain circumstances.
Yes, you could not perform this play in Syria. I mean, aside from the fact that you get killed, the government would, put you in jail. There's still places where it's too dangerous to perform Antigone because its challenge to the state is so grave. Mandela played both Creon and we think played Antigone as well when he was on Robben Island. He certainly studied the play, and he studied it partly as a lesson in standing up to the state, but he also studied it as a play about leadership.
Yeah.
Because Creon is not, well, for Brecht, Creon was Hitler. But for most of us, Creon is a man who's trying to preserve order. There's chaos, there's a civil war, and he establishes order. And he fails horribly, tragically, he fails to do the right thing. But he's trying to do the right thing. So there's Mandela studying, what mistake did he make? And the kids jumped on that right away. They didn't want to talk about that she was in kids. That didn't interest them. They wanted to argue whether Creon was a good leader or not, and why he wasn't a good leader, and why he didn't listen. And they would say, well, because he didn't want to listen to a girl, they would say. Or all kinds of reasons. And so, Wendell talked about pushing questions, and nobody pushed questions more than Sophocles. Although Beckett came, really close.
I mean, these plays both teach us about ourselves and challenge us about ourselves. They push us into corners where we have to figure our way out of.
Yeah.
How would we act?
Yes.
You know that like Aspen Institute has used Antigone for 60 years as a leadership text, but also people have to play it. So all politicians who go to Aspen perform Antigone when they go and they do this because of that. Because first of all, what I believe about it is that when you actually have to do it, that's when you have some skin in the game.
Right.
You're not just sitting there watching it. You actually have to take it on, and then it's something else. But that responsibility that you put on the audience is the key. Will they have a shared experience with you or not? That's what I think.
And what it does is, for Godot, once you realize the futility of waiting, what is your choice? And what spoke to people, and I think happens in Antigone also, is now is the time for you to exercise your right of self-determination. And there it is for you.
That is it.
It is laid bare, the opportunity for you. And what happened in New Orleans was there's so many examples of that in our history that reminds you of it. It also, but we have it throughout our society. We remember, a poet, like a young lady here who's a poet, like Willard, who led, the movement of solidarity. What did Woody Guthrie's music mean to people during the Dust Bowl? And in the Great Depression, this land is
your land. Yeah.
This is your land. Every New Orleanian can tell you the first time they heard after the disaster when Louis Armstrong sang, "Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans and miss her each night and day?" Those words resonated and they rung out because now it wasn't just missing New Orleans. Literally, are we ever going to see the city that we know? Will we ever see it again? I was talking earlier how, the culinary art in New Orleans, we're known for our food. It is an act, it is an artistic act to take scraps from the table and a little burnt flour and oil and build that stew up to what is known around the world as gumbo. Literally a piece of art that literally gives you sustenance, physical sustenance. That is where the rubber meets the road, where literally the
It is
intersection
sustenance.
of a people and how they deal with life, and there's that intersection, which is our culture, and that is in that form and realm where we deal with the issues of what Antigone brings up and what Waiting for Godot brings up.
I think we have time for about 5 minutes of brief questions, meaning questions. If anybody has one, if you raise your hand, we have a microphone, and otherwise we'll just continue talking. But if you have a question, please raise your hand for any of us. Shy people. Okay, fantastic.
Hi, how are you? So I'm currently doing an honors paper on Antigone, so that's why I'm here today. And I was intrigued with the way you, the director, have Antigone appear before the audience dressed in the way you said you dress. I guess the question that I have to ask is, how were you able to internalize what Antigone was feeling at that point in order for your audience to be able to feel the way you are feeling as being Antigone? How were you able to do that?
Through my fellow actors. I think with every play, it really has to be in the moment, receiving what you receive, what is being said to you under the given circumstances that you're in, and being truthful in your response. I think there's something about getting the rehearsal process that cements the lines in you, that it's the only next thing that you can say if you are truthfully invested in listening to what's being said to you. So I think it really was a test for us, this whole project, which Greg also kept saying, of when you really strip theatre of the lights, the set, the costumes, all the things that we as actors don't actually need and sometimes crutch on, and only have truthfully the eyes in front of you and your imagination. If you can truly go to those places, and I mean there were good days and bad days, but essentially I think we took each other there, and we used the experience and the history of the places that we arrived in as well, the different circumstances of watching a community of people that had cousins and brothers in Al-Shabaab, and knowing that there were those that the stakes were high for them as well. So we couldn't start on our back foot in any performance, and we had to really just arrive full hearts and full imagination and a fresh set of eyes each time. And so essentially each other.
I love what you just said about becoming a place where the next line is the inevitable line, essentially. It has to be. It's that into it. And I think it speaks to actually also the quality of the material of what you're doing. I mean, you're talking about Sophocles' Antigone and Beckett's Godot, and these are so pristinely, beautifully made, crafted, that they have that. And I mean, that Oscar Wilde quote about, was it all bad art is sincere? These, if they were lesser works, it wouldn't have that inevitability. Do you know what I'm saying? It's that good.
Yeah, we're talking about two of the greatest plays in thousands of years of playwriting.
Yeah.
They're good plays, and one tries to be equal to them, and one misses by just a little bit every night. But it's there to inspire you and lead you forward.
One more question?
In both of your cases, did you find your performances changing or evolving? In the one case, you were going from one venue to another. In the other case, you were in New Orleans, but your audience, was that changing you and evolving your performance at all?
We actually we did it in two locations, in Lower Ninth Ward and in Jim Tilly, which is closer actually to my home, and it changed every night. We had people who had never even gone to the theater, people who were curious about actually seeing some light in the neighborhood, where they thought it's something. Are they building something back? Because some of the infrastructure come back. There was nothing there. There was no homes, no electricity. We had to bring everything in, and so there was a curiosity of what is this gathering that's happening here. The one moment that I try to describe in the book is how it was like Field of Dreams, seeing those lights coming from the darkness to the ground, and then to have a band lead them there, and then be led, be introduced by, we had a different member of the community just introduce the play every night. And so it definitely did change. I remember, and for me, like I said, it was a homecoming and the awakening of the legacy of what my neighborhood was all about. Pontchartrain Park was a part of African American neighborhood in the middle of segregation, separate but equal. That my parents' generation turned into this beautiful incubator of talent. And so, as it was destroyed, as this Moses generation that had handed us, this Joshua generation, this wonderful place, I felt this call to rebuild it. When they came to the play, it just had an impact on me. You never ask as an actor to say who's in the audience. Some do. There's this critic there, that's a producer out there. But that was the one time I usually avoid it. It doesn't sway me one way or the other, but to know that my elders were there, that the people that had gone through the worst disaster in their life at the end of their life, in their golden years, was spiritual for me. It was a reminder of why I'd come home and what I was doing. And then one particular night, I realized this brought me home to spend the last years with my mother. And one particular night, she said she was invited to introduce the play. And to be in the wings and have your mother introduce the play. And then say, do you mind if I pray? And say a prayer for everyone there. It was just the essential of communal duty. So it did change.
Greg?
Well, I think
we
it's
have
for
one
Phumzile, for whom it was also a homecoming. I mean, you went home to do this.
Yeah. I think it can't not change. I think with different people arriving, the different communities that we get to join with. It was the most emotional one for me was definitely the young boys in prison, because I just kept seeing a whole bunch of in my head a whole bunch of cousins and nephews that were just being naughty. So I just there was just a familiarity and also just a sense of something powerful in knowing that our play was on their side. That it was people that had stood up against the law, even though the law, and fair enough, there were a lot of prisoners who also said to us, no, but Antigone was wrong. And even the girls as well were very much, there was a lot of different groups that were really not on Antigone's side and completely on Creon's side. And so, yes, every performance changed and evolved and impacted us in very individual and different ways. But the one most memorable to me was definitely in the prison, because it was just very tied to the ideas of justice and mercy and yeah.
The actor's job is to do it for the first time every night. That's where you say, if you're a director, you say, do it for the first time. Don't know what's going to happen next. And that's hard if you're in a long-running show. It's really hard to not know what's going to happen next. But the actor has to trick herself into not knowing what's going to happen next. And I think in both these circumstances, we were aided by the fact that you didn't know what the weather was going to be like that night. Yeah. We couldn't even set staging. It's called blocking sometimes. We couldn't block it because every space was so different. The actors had to make up, and sometimes there were 4 or 5 of them on stage at the same time. They had to make up the staging every night in relationship to the audience that was happening. And so that helped and was enormously like hitting a reset button.
We have to finish, but I wanted to say what was thinking about, Wendell, as you were describing, was that some of the audience who were unfamiliar with the play actually came and asked you, was this written about Katrina, about New Orleans? And I think that kind of spoke so vividly to the idea that it was for them. Felt like it could be for them.
It was like that Mississippi sharecropper who said, he ain't coming.
He ain't coming. Well, I want to thank you all for joining in this.
You.
You can world on the website. I think it is, in fact, AntigoneInTheWorld.com.
Yeah, if you just Google Antigone in the World, it'll come
You'll
up.
see. And of course, Wendell's book tells you the story of not only how the message and the mission were expressed by Godot, but also how he took it upon himself afterwards to do powerful activist work in New Orleans. You took on the mantle yourself and inspired so many others. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you.